So without further ado, here is Professor Katie Huntley on an enigma in northern Italy. You may take it away, Katie.
Thank you very much, and I will try then to watch my language since it's being recorded. Some of you might be surprised at what I'm talking about today if you were around when I was doing my PhD, because as I started out doing children in the Roman world, that was my PhD topic and what I worked on for a long time. But as Dr. Simon James told me once, Katie, your PhD is not your life's work. And so I've sort of moved on from that, and now I'm working in northwest Italy at the site of Libarna, which was a Roman colony. The project is called the Libarna Urban Landscapes Project. We call it LOLP for short because the other one is a mouthful. And it's just in its early stages. And so that means I'll be introducing you to the site, the project, and a sort of hodgepodge of information and issues and we've been dealing with, and some of the initial finds we've had, we've been able to come up with. So there is our lovely project logo that one of my students drew. It's a P-neck showing a Medusa head, and I just like to show it because he's very talented, and we don't give him enough credit for his work. But so today I'm going to go over sort of a little bit about Libarna and its history, and some of the questions the project is asking about cultural interaction, change and continuity, the nature of settlement in terms of urban development, culture and economy, the reason for Libarna's decline and abandonment in the 6th century, and the challenges of connecting past and present work, because Libarna has been under excavation for about 2 centuries, but it's all been mostly for the sake of developing the area. So it's a rural area, but it's full of, as I'll talk about, it's full of lots of different industries and other things. So I'll talk a little bit about what the project's been doing. We've been doing 3 years of geophysical survey with the use of multiple techniques. We've had a couple of years of museum and archival work as well, but I won't go into that too much. And I want to talk a little bit about a phenomenon that we noticed that was very drastic. We noticed very drastically at Libarna in 2017, and that was the impact of climate change on our survey. And then I'll end with talking about our future work on the project, if you will. So there's the site. Nowadays, you can see the city, what would have been the city, is bisected by not 1 but 2 railway lines and a modern highway. And this is really interesting because it follows an ancient trade route that I'll talk about in a minute. But in the past few decades, there's been sort of a renaissance of interest in the cultural diversity of peninsular Italy in Roman archaeology, studying the changes in continuity in cultures as Rome expanded throughout the peninsula and gained control over the very diverse peoples living throughout the peninsula. Northern Italy has not been given the same treatment by the archaeological community, the international archaeological community. In fact, at a conference, one of my old professors, Professor Nick Terranato, he told me that it was based that Cisalpine Gaul was probably the place he knew the least about, that he knew very little about it, and he was unfamiliar with Libarna, which quite surprised me. So LOLP has some of the same questions that they've been asking about peninsular Italy. We're asking now about Cisalpine Gaul, about in this case, northwest Italy. And And we've also been sorting out past and more recent archaeological work on the site. So, as I mentioned, nowadays it sits between two railway lines and a modern highway. And the site itself has the potential to tell us a great deal about the early expansion of the Roman Empire into non-Italic regions and how Rome used colonial cities to control the provinces in the kind of earlier to middle days of its empire building. Sorry, I skipped ahead too fast. So what you can see that's visible today is the amphitheater, two city blocks, two insulae, and then if you look up at the top of the picture, in the very middle is a theater. And that's all that's visible, but there have been other things excavated, including a bath complex, the forum, and other kind of segments of insulae and roads under what is now the railway lines. But the two railway lines and the highway directly parallel the ancient Via Postumia, which was the main road that traversed what is now the north of Italy, from Genoa on the west to Aquileia in the east. And in all likelihood, the Roman road followed an earlier prehistoric route. And one thing that many people don't realize who don't do Roman archaeology is that this area of Italy, northern Italy, where it connects to the continent, is not actually considered part of Roman Italy. It was known as Cisalpine Gaul. So it was inhabited by numerous Gallic tribes, not Italic peoples. And the people who inhabited the region around Libarna were known as the Liguri, we think. Hence the name of one of the regions, Liguria. And Libarna sits right on the kind of cusp of Liguria and Piedmonte, the modern provinces in northern Italy. So Libarna wasn't the capital of the province, that was Dertona, but we suspect that it was an incredibly important trading and production center. And while Libarna's foundation is associated with the opening of the Via Postumia in 148 BCE, it was not formally incorporated into the empire until 89 BCE, when it was given Latin citizenship, and when a significant amount of urbanization and building began to take place. So, Libarna, just if Dr. Merrills is there, Libarna does appear on the Peutinger map, which was a 12th or 13th century copy of a 5th century Roman road map, and you can see it circled right there. So it was sort of a major place, if you will. It warranted placement on this travel map. So, Cisalpine Gaul. Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to. I have my notes on another computer. So Cisalpine Gaul is a relatively understudied region in modern Italy. Its name means Gaul on this side of the Alps, the Roman side of the Alps, right? And the other Gaul is Transalpine Gaul. And most of the time when we hear about the Gauls, what we're hearing about is the Transalpine Gauls, not the Cisalpine Gauls. By the time Caesar took his legions over the Alps and into Gaul, Cisalpine Gaul had already been pacified and conquered for a century. And so one of the reasons I think that it's been kind of less studied is because we have less textual sources than we do for Transalpine Gaul. And of course, the name of Caesar also makes Transalpine Gaul more attractive than Cisalpine Gaul, which, didn't really have a famous conqueror. Although Cicero referred to it at one point as the flower of the empire because it was considered very peaceful, very friendly to Rome, and it was, of course, very fertile and good for cultivation. So, and the Cisalpine Gauls were considered, quote, more civilized than their Transalpine counterparts, supposedly because they cultivated the land, and that's according to the ancient Latin sources. So there is quite a bit of evidence already of cultural change and continuity that we see in many aspects of Libarna's material culture and material remains. So this fella on the right, is a statue from the 1st century CE, and he was found in the area of Libarna, but is now housed at the Museo di Archeologica Ligure in Genova. And he's interesting because he's lounging like a Roman, he's wearing a toga, but yet if you look at his face, he's got a mustache. And Romans tended to be clean shaven until, I know Hadrian and his love of beards and all Greek things tries to make beards a thing, but a mustache was definitely not a Roman thing. And then some other aspects of kind of cultural continuity, we can see in this picture of the forum that we took with our drone in the lower left-hand corner. You've got two temples. The one in the upper part of the picture is the base of a Roman-style temple, whereas the one in the lower part of the picture is a temple that resembles other Gallic temples in parts of Transalpine Gaul and parts of France. So, and we also find Gallic, Ligurian material culture artifacts in tombs as well. So, in fact, if anybody's going to the European Archaeological Association conference this summer, Dr. Alessandro Quercia, who also has Leicester connections, is going to be talking about that, so I won't spoil that for you. But if you can go, definitely worth going. So most of what is visible today, as you can see here on this map, the gray areas are the bits that were excavated in the 19th and early 20th century, the theater, the amphitheater, and this long line which was clearly part of, the excavations prior to putting in the railway line, and parts of the forum. As well, and so most of this that's visible was built during the Judeo-Claudian period, so the 1st century kind of CE. One of the big questions we have is that we don't know just how big Libarna got. They've identified two monumental gates that were found at the northern and southern sides of the site during the building of an electrical plant in the north and a chocolate factory in the south. But there's no evidence of walls at all, which may suggest that, again, the region was mostly pacified and that it would allow Libarna to grow without walls as an impediment separating city from suburbs, if you will. It may also have made the city seem more welcoming to traders and other people moving along the Via Postumia. It's more open, more easily able to become part of the community. But in all likelihood, again, Libarna was probably a very, very important settlement in the region. So, and just on that map, the green bits represent crop marks from our drone reconnaissance, and the red is from the ground penetrating radar. So, as I mentioned, there have been numerous excavations, and there's a lot of conflicting information about Libarna and about what was excavated, when it was excavated, where it was excavated. So in the early 1900s, a guy named Gaetano Poggi excavated the forum and what he called the basilica. And this is the map he drew, which the forum is sort of right in the lower center area and looks nothing, again, like the forum that we can see to the right in our drone footage. And for one thing, he placed what he thought was the basilica in the southern portion of the forum, whereas if you look at our drone footage, it looks like what might have been the basilica it actually is to the north, closer to that Roman-style temple, rather than to the south near the Gallic-style temple. So can everybody kind of see that building there? I don't know if you can see my mouse, but so and partially he may have done that. He did this intentionally because there was a lot of concern about people pillaging archaeological sites at this point, and so so his kind of obfuscation of the location of certain things was probably intentional in some ways. So, but on his map you can see the theater. And you can see the amphitheater and that weird shaped building with 4 rooms. In between was the bath complex, which was visible at that point, but has since been kind of reburied. Other antiquarians and archaeologists were much more meticulous in their details, such as Gaetano Poggi, not Gaetano Poggi, Gianfrancesco Capurro, who excavated the bath complex in the 19th century. And we were able to see with our ground penetrating radar that he was very, very detailed and accurate in terms of both his sketching of the bath complex as well as its placement, though you can't tell from, I wasn't able to kind of orient it to show you, but he was very, very accurate in recording the form of the baths and their location. So, and Gianfrancesco Capurro, he was a local priest, and he'll come up again a little later. He's a very important local figure and a local hero in terms of archaeology. He's an archaeological hero. So, Loeb's work has used multiple survey techniques and has found several interesting things. One, we found that the archaeology has actually survived beneath some of the paved spaces, particularly the parking lot for the archaeological site, which makes me really want to go out there in the night with some, get some lights on when there's no traffic and try to do some GPR over the highway. I doubt that'll ever happen, but we all have our dreams. We were able to identify the probable location of the basilica, which contradicts what was originally believed to be the location of the basilica. And then interestingly, and I say this very, very cautiously, but we may have identified a possible macellum, which is in the lower left-hand corner of the of the map. So it's a sort of a macellum. It's a big rectangular building. I'll show you a closer picture of it here. You can see it most clearly in the lower right-hand one, but it's definitely some sort of public structure. It may have been a macellum, but we're hesitant to say so because there's been no recorded macellum anywhere in Piedmonte in any of the Roman cities. But it's quite an interesting structure. Unfortunately, it's on private land. It's in somebody's field, so I don't know when or if ever we will get to excavate it, but it would be quite interesting, especially if it is in fact a macellum, but we'll see. So we did 3 years of survey. Two years we were successful in finding kind of out a lot of information, particularly using our drone and ground penetrating radar. But we also made use of electrical resistivity and magnetometry, and those two turned out to be more or less kind of useless due to certain equipment. The first year in 2016, when the project was known as the Libarna Archaeological Project, we had the magnetometer and electrical resistivity machine, but all the metal pollution and development prevented us from getting much usable data. And the two train lines messed with the electrical resistivity machine, and we clocked the trains as coming through about every 13 minutes. So it's a really busy, heavily trafficked area that Libarna lies in. So, and the electrical resistivity machine too wasn't much better due to dry conditions, which I'll talk about in a minute. So the drone reconnaissance and the ground penetrating radar ended up being sort of our most useful resources. So, and as you can see, these are from 2 fields south of the amphitheater area, and you can see just, I mean, the archaeology is very close to the surface. It's about a meter down, maybe less. And you can see the GPR picked up roads, it picked up all sorts of structures and internal walls, and just really, really, really good imagery, good imaging, I guess. And some, so in 2017 and 2018, we just had some really spectacular data that's hopefully going to help us plan our next step, which is excavations. So thinking back about the electrical resistivity and the dry conditions, one thing that was very clear to us during the 3 years that we've been doing field survey there is that climate change has had a significant impact on the environment and on survey and on how we choose our survey techniques. Because it used to be that, you know, you didn't need irrigation in northern Italy. They don't irrigate their crops. They used to get plenty of rainfall. The temperatures were relatively mild, and that has been changing. In Italy, it's been recorded that the number of days of precipitation has decreased in the last 50 years. On days when there is rain, it tends to be of higher intensity for a shorter duration than it has been in the past. So we sort of went back and looked at some of the data regarding the total days of rain and the accumulation. So bursts of rain are less efficient for crop watering overall than kind of less rain over a longer duration, because obviously it leads to runoff, and if the soil is too dry. And so that has had a massive impact on certain crops. And this has been noted throughout all of Italy and other parts of Europe as well. And of course, a couple years ago, it was noted in Britain, right, that there were a lot of archaeological sites that could be seen suddenly because of drought conditions. So. And in Italy, for the most part, a lot of the decrease in rainfall and moisture has been coming during the winter months. So in other words, it's very likely that the phenomenon of very clear crop marks, like we had in Libarna, will only increase. Whoops. My computer is being slow. Please excuse it. There we go. So, and I mean, you can just see the detail in these crop marks, and it's very likely that this is going to be the future. That in many ways we were fortunate to be present during the time window of optimum visibility when we had our drone. But other frequently used forms of geophysical survey, like electrical resistivity, do not do well during drought conditions. They rely on moisture in the soil for the electricity, obviously, to travel. And so this is one of the things that made the electrical resistivity device more or less useless when we were using it. And you can see in that photo just how dry the conditions are, and it's the fields were just baked. So the other interesting thing that we noticed about the crop marks was that they coincided with a particular crop known as alfalfa, which is locally known as herba medica. Alfalfa is a fodder crop which grows to a height of about 1 meter. The roots, which are typically 2 to 3 meters deep, can grow up to 14 meters in order to access underground water resources. Alfalfa is a taproot plant, and it can go long periods without water as it stores it in its roots. It is a perennial that winters well by relying on the water stored in those roots. It's established by planting after the first frost, and its rapid growth means it can be harvested multiple times in 1 year before it goes dormant for winter. And it can be harvested for up to 5 years before it is necessary to replant it. Alfalfa's usefulness in highlighting subterranean architecture and archaeological features comes from its regular planting and close spacing between plants. In Italy, farmers sow using a seed drill, creating ideal conditions for spotting differences in growth. The crops in Libarna, as in many areas of northern Italy, receive no irrigation. The only source of water is precipitation. Since alfalfa is a hardy crop, it does not need constant watering and can survive so long as it receives enough water at critical times during its development. The soil in the region are alkaline and well suited for this particular crop. And when we spoke to local farmers, they assured us that in previous years, alfalfa was a hardy crop that had made good returns. And we can therefore eliminate the cause of poor growth, as this was a common crop with an uncommon growth pattern. Furthermore, crops in multiple fields were affected, suggesting that the observed phenomenon was not localized. As the alfalfa crop was planted new in 2017 in April, the results we were seeing could not be winter injury. The fact that this was the first recently planted harvest meant that the crop was more vulnerable to the drought. And while deep roots were created early when there was water, the later drought meant that the substructures underneath the soil may have had a more profound effect on the crop. But again, here's a little bit of a closer look. That is the Via Postumia. And you can see the detail. You can see individual paving stones. You can see just all the structures along on each side of the road. You can see that big line running along the Via Postumia that might have been a sewer or part of the water system for the city. So overall, this is the information we've gathered sort of over the 2 to 3 years we've had, the 2 years we've had usable data, the 3 years we've been there. And we've added some 8 hectares of data in total, I believe, to the site. And so our next step, not this summer, but next summer, is to hopefully begin excavations. And we plan to excavate to the south of the amphitheater and insula blocks in what we've labeled Field A. And that's some GPR, that's a GPR slice from Field A that, again, you can just see there's a lot of survival of the archaeology. Even though it's not very deep in the soil. So, but for this summer, we have a smaller plan, a smaller, more reasonable plan that can hopefully weather whatever we have coming our way with COVID and international travel and things like that. And our goal is to digitize the collection of the Municipal Museum of Serravalle Scrivia, which holds a collection of artifacts from Libarna, including the Capurro collection. And if you recall, Gianfrancesco Capurro was the archaeologist and priest who excavated the baths. So yes, and so public engagement has been a very important part of the project. I worked for many years at Pompeii, and when you go to Pompeii and you tell them you're an archaeologist, they're like, oh, it's another one of you. But there's a lot of enthusiasm for the work in this region. There's even a local association of just people who live around the site who are interested in it, called Associazione Libarna Arteventi. And they put on plays, they put on like dining experiences where you can try old Roman foods. They work with the Soprintendenza that oversees the site. And they've just been very supportive of our work. And so so we see public engagement as being a very, very important aspect of the project. And this digitization of this collection, this museum, we hope to expand that public engagement. So what's next? So most of it is what we call the Capurro collection, and it's a fun story. I don't know if it's true, but we're told that the way he put together his collection was that he would go around to the local landowners who would be plowing their fields and obviously bringing up Roman antiquities and keeping them in their house. So Capurro, who was a priest, again, a priest and an archaeologist, he would go to them and ask them to donate the artifacts because he wanted to create a museum for the people. The first museum about Libarna for the people. If they turned him away, he was not deterred, and he would return and offer them money for their artifacts. If they turned him away again, he returned the third time with a shotgun. And so that's how he put together his collection. And so it's a small collection, and so it's very reasonable to do, you know, in a couple 2-3 weeks this summer. And so that's what we're really hoping to do before we start excavating, fingers crossed, next year. There are other artifacts in this museum as well from other other collectors who found artifacts from Libarna, but it's predominantly comes from Gianfrancesco Capurro. So, and this is one of my favorite artifacts from the collection. I think it's really interesting. It's a column capital from the theater, and it shows some sort of deity, and he's flanked by 2 dolphins. And it's really interesting because Libarna is 50 kilometers from the sea. So we get a lot of sea imagery on artifacts from Libarna, not just this column capital, but on a lot of artifacts. I'm holding on, if you can hear me.
I think you're back.
I'm back? I'm back.
Yeah.
Well, I was just about finished, so I just wanted to, that was sort of the last thing I wanted to show. Can you still see my presentation?
Yep.
Oh, okay, excellent. Good. So yeah, so it's really interesting that they've got all this sea imagery, and they're 50 kilometers from the sea. So my field director believes that there was may have been some sort of cult to a sea deity at Libarna, but obviously that's at this point sort of speculation. But it would be quite interesting. So and then that's sort of what I wanted to talk about today. Just lots of people to thank. Again, one of the great things about working at Libarna is we've had so much support and so much enthusiasm about the project that, you know, that there aren't enough people that I can thank. It would take many more slides than this, but these are the main people. So thank you so much for letting me talk to you, and I hope if you didn't know anything about Cisalpine Gaul and about Libarna, that you learned a little bit. And yeah, if anybody has any questions or anything, any comments.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that, Katie. Yep, we can all give her a virtual round of applause now. Yeah, I learned a lot about Cisalpine Gaul. That was very interesting. I liked a lot of your aerial photography. I thought those were very cool. So I will open us up to questions. You can type your question into the chat, or you can use the raise hand feature. I'll do my best to take the questions in the order they come.
Can I stop sharing my screen, or should I keep it?
If you wish, but you may want to keep it up in case someone asks a question about one of the slides.
Okay, excellent. All right.
And while people are gathering their thoughts, I can ask a question or two.
Okay.
One question I have is kind of a practical one. It's a project from your university, right? So are your excavators students, or are they local professionals, or who are you working with mostly?
Actually, it's not. I don't associate it with Boise State
Okay.
for certain political reasons. So our students have come from different universities throughout the United States. So and most of the people I work with are either local archaeologists. So my field director, Melania Cazzulo, is she grew up near Libarna, and so we work very closely with her. I had my drone expert, Michael Boyles, who I should have added him there too. He's from Texas Tech University. Our GPR specialist came from the Colorado School of Mines. So we work with a lot of people from a lot of different regions, a lot of different places. And when we start excavations, we're going to have sort of a new team. So I've got some people associated with Leicester who are going to come out and help do our animal bones. We're working with a local pottery specialist in Italy who's going to manage manage the pottery. Our animal bone specialist is coming from Australia, though I think she got her degree at Southampton, I believe. So we've just got people from all over the place working. I tried to put together a team I think would work well together rather than stick with people at Boise State, although I do bring Boise State students. I do that. But I'm the only Roman archaeologist at Boise State. We have a Greek archaeologist in the art history department, and that's it as far as archaeologists goes. We have no other archaeologists.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like you have a really good team. I think it's a lot of people comment on the merit of having local archaeologists work on your project. But I have a question. Yeah, I have a question from Graham Shipley.
Oh, hey, Graham.
Hi, Katie. It's great to see you again. It seems like only yesterday you were a teaching fellow in the department. So good to have you back.
It was a decade ago.
Oh, well, it doesn't seem many years at my age. So fantastic site, massive potential, quite clearly, a great historical crossroads and things like that. You mentioned it was 50 kilometers, 30 miles from the sea, but I've just been looking at Google Earth and there is actually a river. So was there river trade? Was it a navigable river? And is Libarna actually kind of networked in with Genoa and places like that?
That's an excellent question. So we have been trying to determine that. Right now, the river Scrivia, which is the one you're talking about, during the summer, it's not navigable. It gets very dry and shallow. That could have been different, obviously, in antiquity. We did some GPR work along sort of where the banks were to see if we could identify any sort of structures that might have been like a port or, like a port or a place for boats to stop. And we couldn't find anything. And so we don't know how navigable the river was. And it is today, even today, though, in the winter time or fall, summer, prone to flash flooding. So it's not a very stable river that I know of, but that's an excellent question. And there was connections with Genoa. We think predominantly through the Via Postumia, via the road. But also we know that there were connections with another seaside town known as Luni, which was further south along the coast. So, and Genoa and Luni were both Etruscan sites originally. So, so it could have come. So that sort of imagery could have been inspired by those relationships. So.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. We still have plenty of time for questions. If you want to get a question in from anyone in the audience, you can raise your hand. You can type it into the chat. Here's one from Simon James.
Okay.
Hi, Katie. Thank you very much for that. Enjoyed that. Looks like you've been having fun.
Yes, I have.
With regard to your future plans for excavation, can you give us a bit more idea of the kind of scale of excavation you're planning and duration? What do you think you're going to be doing?
Well, for me, small scale, because I've worked on small scale excavations and large scale excavations, and I want to keep it small and under control because, as you know, I worked for years for Hillary Cool, who gets backlogged projects up to speed and published, and so the one thing I don't want to do is get behind on any of the post-excavation work. So I'm thinking of opening, talking about 2 smallish trenches a year. And I mean, I think Libarna has so much potential. I don't know how long we would be there in terms of years, because I think there's a lot. And I think, for example, if we could raise the money and buy out, the crops from that one farmer and do some excavations of that public building that may be a macellum, I'd like to do that. Slow and steady wins the race in my mind. So small scale excavations, maybe teams of 20 people, 20, 25 people, 20 people. So I don't know if that answers your kind of questions, but
yeah, it does. I think also, these days I work in Cyprus, and it's interesting how the way you approach projects tends to be modulated partly by the, of course, the local archaeological administration, the Department of Antiquities, and so on. For example, they are very aware of Western archaeologists coming in and digging large holes and building up enormous backlogs, and never quite getting around to publishing it. So they tend to like you to, well, they more or less say you can't do more than 5 years before you publish, to make sure you don't back things up. So are you encountering parameters like that with the Soprintendenza?
That's a good question. So about, I think it was 3 years ago, there was a change in the Italian cultural ministry that kind of refashioned the entire system. And there are sort of kind of rules. I don't know if they're written in stone or they're just traditional, but generally you have 10 years to publish, and after that anybody has access to your data, or if you should pass away as well. But you have to sign forms that say you'll submit a report to the archives within so many months of completing a season, and that obviously you sign away all your rights to any of the artifacts and anything found. So there are rules and things like that. But what we've gotten from the Soprintendenza that we're working with for our region has been nothing but support for our project. They've just been absolutely wonderful, and anything we need, they're like, we can do it, we can get it for you. So they're very enthusiastic about the project, and I've been quite good about turning in our reports within a month after. Obviously survey is much easier to write up than excavation, but I've been very good about turning in those very solid reports to them in good Italian, within a month of finishing the work, and so I think that's given them a good, at least given me a good basis to have earned some trust from them, I guess.
That's great. It's good to hear. It's you obviously played the diplomacy very sensibly, and I'm also very pleased to hear that I think maybe you've been fairly lucky with your particular Soprintendenza, because of course these things are tremendously variable across Italy, or they have been. Anyway, thanks very much.
Thank you, Simon.
Yeah, very good. I was also quite pleased to see the level of enthusiasm that you got in return for your public engagement. Or maybe even bring about your public engagement. I thought that was very cool. Maybe a question I might also have for you, Katie. I think you mentioned that there was a place at Libarna that had previously been interpreted as like a bath complex, but that's no longer the case?
No, it is a bath complex. It's just it was excavated and then it was reburied, I think, to protect it. And actually, about 4 years ago, they re-excavated it because they're putting in an underpass for the railway line. So more development, sadly more destruction of the archaeology, but they did a good job recording it. And they found a part of Libarna's sewer system, which was really cool. And so they did a lot of environmental sampling, and I'm really looking forward to reading about that, because I think they're trying to take care of the site the best they can. It's a poor region in terms of money for cultural heritage. I mean, when people think about Roman cities, they think about Lazio and Tuscany and Campania, and that's what we know about Roman cities. And here we've got one up in the north in an area that we don't know much about. But so much money goes to the places that are more famous, that get a lot of tourism. I mean, Milan is about an hour away by train from Libarna, and I've met people from Milan. I meet people from Milan all the time who've never heard of Libarna. So it's really I think important, and that's why I'm hoping by digitizing this collection, that'll help to extend public knowledge of the site. So, and actually the site itself has a wonderful website. So if you Google Libarna, a former funzionario, Marica Venturino, put together a wonderful website about Libarna, the archaeological site. So it's definitely worth looking at if you're interested in hearing more, reading more about it, and seeing more of the site.
Very cool. Yeah, I hope it's the right website. I've actually just posted the link into the chat now. So if you want to investigate it, it's there. It all seems really cool, and I think the people who live near Libarna are really looking forward to more excavations, and so they can learn more about their local place, and then maybe more people from Milan will know about it. Also, I'll give. Oh, go on.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say they are really enthusiastic and helpful. We do an open day every year where we invite them out. We give a little presentation, and then we show them the machinery, the geophysical machinery we've been using, and let them try it out. Not the drone. Nobody touches the drone. But the second year, we were expecting maybe 20 to 30 people to show up, and we had 60. And people were lined up outside the visitor center to get in, and they played a game of telephone for what was being said inside the visitor center during the presentation part. So people are just really, really excited about the site. They love it. It's part of their history, and they feel very close to it. And so, yeah.
Yeah, very cool. All right, I'll give one last call for questions. This is your last chance. I'm sure you could always email Katie if you have any other questions.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, yeah, well, thank you again, Katie. We learned a lot about, this really cool place in North Italy, both Libarna and also, I suppose, the whole region, and about your different techniques and your really exciting project and its public engagement. And we look forward to hearing more about it in the future once excavations can resume. So we'll give one last round of applause for Katie. And and take care and good luck. We can all go enjoy our dinners.